Okay, we got a lot to talk about, so let's get to it. The January 3rd edition of TNA iMPACT. It's the go-home edition before Final Resolution. Now, I said in a previous video that I thought iMPACT had been largely hit and miss since they expanded to 2 hours. And while I thought last week's show was a solid hit, iMPACT this week was unfortunately a miss, and a pretty big one in my opinion. Very disappointing. I did not like this show at all for several different reasons. Chiefly among them was that there was an incredible lack of focus on the actual pay-per-view, which, considering the Final Resolution is this Sunday, was just plain wrong. You know, instead of trying to do one last push for all the matches on the card this Sunday, they instead wasted their time on a whole bunch of things that had absolutely nothing to do with it at all, which I will get into in a little bit. Basically, iMPACT was a tale of two shows. The first show was in the Impact Zone, where we had 4 different Gauntlet matches to determine the rankings in all the various divisions, heavyweight, tag team, etc. Now, while this might seem like a good idea on paper, the execution of it I thought was pretty terrible, actually. First of all, with the exception of the heavyweight gauntlet, none of these matches really had any bearing whatsoever on the pay-per-view. Second of all, the booking of these matches was questionable at best and absolutely asinine at the worst. For example, in the tag team gauntlet, LAX were eliminated during the commercial break. And they were easily, they were, you know, the most over tag team in that match, even more so than Sabin and Shelley. Not to mention the fact that Kip James, wearing perhaps the gayest wrestling tights in the history of Western civilization, was in that match for way too long, when simple common sense tells us that he should have been the very first man eliminated. Just to get him out of our sight so we wouldn't have to look at those tights anymore. Then in the heavyweight gauntlet, you had Black Rain and Relic. Yes, Black Rain and Relic, lasting longer than Booker T, Abyss, and Kaz. Now, if that booking is not absolutely asinine, then I don't know anything. Oh, and for the record, I do apologize to all the homosexuals out there for comparing you with Kip James. I'm sorry, no one deserves to be insulted by being compared to Kip James. So I do apologize for that. Then, there's a little fact that these so-called rankings that are being determined by these gauntlet matches are essentially meaningless. Because if they're supposed to determine the order in which these people are all getting title shots, which I assume might have, which I think might have been the point, I'm not sure. They never said one way or the other. Anyway, this would now mean that Black Rain and Relic are going to get shots at the World Heavyweight Championship before Booker T, Abyss, and Kaz do, and we all know that's not going to happen. At least I hope we do. So anyway, the whole thing pretty much had no point to it at all. And by the way, if Black Rain and Relic, do indeed get heavyweight title shots, I will have the overwhelming urge to burn the creative team in effigy. Just throwing that out there. Anyway, the second show was at AJ Styles' family's house, where we had a series of comedy skits with AJ locking himself in a room like a 5-year-old, still unable to make a decision about who he wants to align himself with, Christian Cage or Kurt Angle. They kept cutting back to these vignettes throughout the show, doing interviews with AJ's family and friends, you know, his priest, his former teachers, whatever. And with the exception of AJ himself, who I did think was funny during this, pretty much the whole thing fell completely flat. These skits went way past the point of redundancy. We didn't need nearly as many as we got, and they took away far too much time when that time was badly needed to promote the other angles on the show. Which brings me back to my first point, the lack of focus on Final Resolution. Now, on this pay-per-view, this Sunday, we are going to see LAX versus Rock and Rave Infection, Lance Hoyt and Jimmy Rave. Did you know this? Because I didn't know this until I saw it on the TNA website this morning. The announcers never even mentioned the match when they were running down the card, and the feud was not touched upon at all during the show. You know, like it didn't even matter enough to warrant a mention. And For the life of me, I really don't understand why TNA has been treating LAX like absolute shit lately, but that's a topic for another video. Also, the Kaz and Black Rain and Abyss Juice Macias feuds were not built up either, although they did at least get graphics for their matches when they were running the card down, which is more than LAX got. Also, Gail Kim, who is defending her women's championship against Awesome Kong in a no DQ match, did not even appear on the show at all. She didn't get to cut a promo, didn't get anything. And Awesome Kong, who was on the show, participated in the women's Gauntlet match, but was outlasted by 3 other women. Now explain that to me, because I don't get it. Also, and this is the part that really, really made me angry, they did an angle where the Dudleys took a Singapore cane to the hands of Sabin and Shelley, injuring their hands so they won't be able to traverse the ropes in their Ultimate X match this Sunday. But the problem with this came a few minutes later when Jay Lethal, Sabin and Shelley's partner in that match, did a backstage interview in which he was upset, but not about his partners getting their hands broken, not about having his title belt stolen weeks earlier, but about Sanjay Dutt stealing a kiss from SoCal Val at the iMPACT Christmas party. Which had nothing to do with his feud with the Dudleys, nothing to do with the match at Final Resolution, or the chance of getting his title belt back. You know, like all that wasn't even important enough for him to talk about. I mean, this guy lost his title belt and he's not even upset about it. And now it's pretty much up to him to win the Ultimate X match for his team. You know, that's all on his shoulders now, and he doesn't even care. And that is supposed to be our X Division champion. I mean, the X Division title is being made to look absolutely meaningless right now, and I hated this. I absolutely hated this. And then we had a hot shot at angle where Samoa Joe and Kevin Nash were made the challengers for the tag team titles this Sunday. And while there is a storyline behind that with all the stuff that's been they've been doing with Samoa Joe, this could have just as easily have been announced. They could have announced this match, 3 weeks ago. I don't know why they didn't. Finally, it was announced that we'll be seeing Robert Roode and Miss Brooks versus Booker T and Sharmell. No surprises there. We all knew that was coming. This feud has some decent build behind it now, but this match would probably mean a lot more if we hadn't already seen several different variations of it already. And to top it all off, the main event of Final Resolution is Christian Cage versus Kurt Angle for the World Heavyweight Championship. Now, this will be a great match, no question about it, but the problem here is the same problem with the X Division title belt. The feud is completely focused on something else. In this case, all the focus is not about the title, but about who is AJ Styles going to align himself with, which given the way AJ has been portrayed now as an indecisive child with no backbone whatsoever, it makes absolutely no sense at all. And they're fighting for the World Heavyweight title, and I don't think said title has even been mentioned yet, which says a lot about its importance, sad as that may be. At this rate, and to be portrayed as being more important than the World Heavyweight Championship, the only way this AJ Styles storyline is going to work at all is if whatever AJ's decision ends up being has massive, massive ramifications. Something like AJ destroying Angle and Christian with the title belt, telling both of them to go straight to hell, and then declaring his intentions to become world champion himself. And if you ask me, at this point, that looks pretty doubtful. So that's the card for Final Resolution. And while it is a solid show on paper, the build-up has been really lacking in my opinion. And the huge lack of focus during this show did nothing to rectify that, unfortunately. In fact, I kind of hope this show does a really crappy buy rate, because that might then give the creative team, the TNA creative team, the wake-up call that they need, and make them realize that they need to make serious changes to how they build toward their pay-per-views, because this was not good. This was not good at all. Having said that, I still expect it to be a good show. There should be some interesting story developments coming out of it at the very least, and I will be back to talk about them. So I'll see you guys next week. Good talking to you, and talk to you again soon.